What's going on, junkies? It's Brandon Dukeman here with Will Harvey, and thanks for joining us for another daily episode of the Wealth Junkies Show. But first, before we get started, like always, join us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Wealth Junkies and subscribe to the show so that way you're not missing any of our daily episodes. And without any more talking, I'm just going to toss it over to Will so he can introduce our awesome guest for the day.
Thanks, Brandon. Today on the show, we have Jake Dunlap. So Jake created his own consulting firm from the ground up with a focus on the sales and marketing processes and technology. His company Scaled has now grown to 2 offices in Austin, Texas, and New York City. And he works with large clients such as LinkedIn, Servata, ADP, and Microsoft, who seek the new and innovative sales strategy that Jake not only focuses on his company's brand, but he understands and emphasizes the importance of his personal brand. Now, I might have just botched that because I read it.
That's good, man.
But Jake,
there's a lot in there.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, thanks so much for coming on the show. Can you just give the listeners a little bit more about your background and what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, great. Well, look, thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to chopping it up for the next,
for sure,
30, 45 or so. Yeah, look, I mean, I grew up in Kansas City, and went to school in Missouri, in Southern Missouri, took my sweet time. And then, got into, look, I wasn't the best student, but I did sales in college. So when I was in college, I worked almost full time. So I worked probably like 30, 35 hours a week. Wow. And so I started by the time I got into the workforce, like after graduation, like I was already better than most people.
Yeah, you had all that experience.
I'd already done it. I did telemarketing. I sold vacation packages. I sold MCI WorldCom. You guys probably, most of you don't even know what the hell that is.
Yeah, never heard of it.
WorldCom, they got in some trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had nothing to do with that, but basically, you used to solicit people on the phone to switch their long distance, and so I would try to get you to do that, and so.
Everybody on the show right now is really young and they're going, what is long distance? What is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't really make sense anymore. It's like, it is kind of a weird concept, right? Like there's so many things like that where you're like, oh yeah, like the concept of long distance is just
right.
So anyway, did that, went to work in sports, worked for the Tampa Bay Rays, then worked for the Phoenix Coyotes, got out of sports to go work in tech with a company called Career Builder in Phoenix. The early days, I think, early in my career, I'll tell you kind of some things that I think I did that helped to separate me, which I think will be, I'll get into some of the stuff that I'm doing now later, but I think would be interesting for your audience is because some of the decisions that I made early in my career and how those accelerated my career faster than the people around me. And That's I think great. That will be, I think that could be helpful. So a couple of things is make sure that what I realized really early on, actually in like once I my professional career was like, I liked sales. Like I like it. It's fun for me. It's energizing. It doesn't give me, of course it's stressful and has anxiety, but I like it. I genuinely am also very curious about it. I love psychology. I love sociology, behavior. Like there's everything about sales. Like it was like, this is what I like to do. Not just like the smoozing part. I actually didn't really like that. Mm-hmm. I like the science behind sales. And so I think I was because I'd done different things in college, I kind of gravitated towards something I wanted to do. So my first advice is you cannot be all time at something if you don't love it. Like if you just kind of like it, your chances of being all time at it are like super, super low. So that would be my first thing, is make sure you align to it. 2, look, whether it's reading or podcasts, studying the game and studying what you're passionate about and what you're doing outside of work is what will separate you from the people, especially as like that interest compounds over time. Where if I'm reading or getting better an hour every day, in a year, that means, I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't really can't do all that math, but like that means I probably get an extra. I think means I get like an extra month every year of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I quickly realized that most people came in and mailed it in at work, and if you just work like this much harder than people, and you care about the work, so it makes you want to do it more, you're going to be able to destroy. And I moved in a year and a half. I moved from group sales to season ticket to one of 2 senior account executives managing the inside sales team in my very first job. And it was
Wow.
because of that. It was because I saw what was happening. I'm naturally a very challenger person. I'll get into how that got me fired in different roles, but like, so like I see the status quo and I'm like, dude, I gotta find a better way to do this. Like I start with that. I start by copying everything. Like that would be another piece of advice I'd give to everyone. Like the reason I read so much is, why reinvent the wheel? If there's this guy who sold a million books and he says to say it like this, I'm just gonna say it like that.
Right. It worked for him.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you think these people are telling you to do this stuff because it's wrong? Like
Exactly.
that was a lesson I learned when I was 26, 27, when I was at Career Builder. My boss pulled me in a room. I was like second to last to sell something out of my training class. There's like 8 other people. And I'm like, man, what is going on? Because I'd had so much success in sports. And I know I'm kind of bouncing a little bit here, but I did so much success in sports. And I'm like, dude, why am I struggling here? And Evan pulled me aside. He goes, Jake, stick to the messaging. He's like, do you think we train 1,000 salespeople on this process because it's stupid? And like, it doesn't work. And it was a massive light bulb moment for me. I'm like, well, no, probably not. And he's like, exactly. He's like, and sure enough, I closed $60,000 in new business the next month.
Wow.
Like, just by taking my natural abilities, fitting it to the system. And that's when all the light bulbs turned on for me. I was like, man, sales is a process. It is not this kind of thing with a bunch of techniques. Like, no, there's a right and a wrong way to move people through a sales process. So those are some of my big learning points. Again, like I always just put in a little bit more work every day. And over the course of my career, very early on, I just saw that compound, so that's what I'm putting in at 23, 24, 25, 26. So then, look, I was a VP of sales at Glassdoor who sold last year for 1.2 billion. I was a VP of sales when I was 30, right? Like, and none of those opportunities, I went back and got my MBA. I got Career Builder. They helped to pay for my MBA. So I did all that stuff before I was 30. And because again, it's that little micro stuff that you do for yourself, because I didn't get shit out of undergrad. I got nothing out of I went to undergrad, but I was very intent about, I didn't go get my MBA. I don't the amount of people that actually know that I have an MBA is shockingly low. Like I don't put it on my Jake Dunlap MBA. I don't do any of that. Right. I did that for me. I wanted to learn. I'm like, if I want to progress where I want to in my career, maybe understanding like better finance and accounting, understanding the economy more effectively, understanding how to communicate with people outside of sales and finance, operations, engineering. It helped to make me much more rounded in my experiences. And so I think, you got to start, now that you're at this point in your career, you got to start to do the learning stuff, not because it's a piece of paper or a checkbox, because it's actually going to compound over time. That if I'm doing that stuff over time, just like your 401k, or your early investments that you make, that would be my other piece of advice. If you're not 25 and investing in your 401k, like I don't know how you guys feel about that. But it's free money. Like the government's going to take X, you invest Y, like why wouldn't you do it? And then by 35, 40, like you've already got maybe a $500,000 to $1 million, and you never even knew the money was gone. So there's another side plug of things that I did when I was young that I thought was smart.
That's all good stuff. I love that.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. I mean, you did a lot in your 20s. I mean, you're doing a lot more than most people probably, I would say the average person would probably graduate college and do that one job to, thinking they're going to do that for the rest of their life. So kind of talk to us about how you got into a lot of these sales jobs and the sports teams and things like that.
Well, I've applied online. I mean, that's how I got my first one. And then after a year and a half, so let me tell you like a lot of the mistakes that I made too along the way. So one,
I love mistakes.
There's a lot.
So much to learn from there.
Well, the tough part is getting people to actually like do something different. Even when they know what the right answer is. So for me, the grass isn't always greener. right? Like a lot of times you think like, oh, I'm going to go here and it's going to be all sunshines and roses, and it's not. Something else that I learned over time is you can learn from anybody. So even if you've got a boss and you're like, man, he's kind of this, whatever, but she or he has, some value to add, and you are continuing to grow at the company. There's a saying about how like people leave, they don't leave companies, they leave bosses. And I think that's true to some extent, but I also think just because your boss is okay, if the company is epic, like don't leave,
Right.
you don't have to leave. How about that? Maybe that's a better way. You don't have to leave. So I think you got to be proactive about your career. And that's something that I did figure out very early. Is I figured out like, oh, no one's going to pick me. I'm not some special flower that like, ooh, someone's going to be like, oh, look at Jake. He's doing so well. We're going to now anoint him the blah, blah, blah. No, I made my opportunities happen. You know what I mean? And I think I think a lot of people, a lot of people don't do that. So I had that, but the double edge to that sword is like, it also made me like more aggressive in the workplace where like I would push for things that I wanted. So I think early on, just, listening more than you talk, I think can usually be a good default. But also advocating for yourself. There's no problem in advocating for yourself, but I always would bring the business case. And that's how I always got my promotions. When I went to Career Builder, so left sports. So the reason I left sports is when I was at the Coyotes, I was the #1 person in premium seat sales, crushing it. And my boss at the time, like he would go and he'd like drink with us and he'd get drunk in the suites and stuff. And so you think that you develop this relationship. And so politely in an email once, I told him to F off. And it was
politely.
I thought it was joking. I mean, I thought, you know what I mean? Like I thought we had that, and they fired me. And
Wow.
I went home. I was crying, listening to Train, and it was bad. But like, well, because that's what happened when you get fired for the first time in your career. You're just like, I got fired. Who gets fired? Again, my mom or dad had a job. Oh my God. So like that would be it. If you get fired, don't worry about it. Like shit will all work out. It'll all be fine. So don't stress on getting fired.
True.
And so when I went to Career Builder, because I had done what I had done, they were just opening an office when I went there. And I started off in the field. I gave you that story from before about then I started to perform. But I also had another very critical conversation. This goes back to proactive about your career that I think everyone can take away from. Is I went to my same guy, director Evan. I said, hey, I want to be a leader here because that's not a goal. And I was like, no clue. Uh-oh, I'm being invaded.
The aliens are coming.
All right, so there's going to be a fire alarm that's going to go off.
That's all right.
So what I'll do,
we'll edit it out.
you guys can edit this. You'll just edit.
Oh
it.
yeah,
that's funny.
You can edit part of it out. Okay, so let me see how bad. Let me see how bad it is.
It's a fire drill?
No, it's just a fire alarm, like a test of the fire alarm.
That's funny.
Oh, that's hilarious.
All right, so until this test happens, I'll just give you the rest of the story. So basically what ended up happening was Evan said it's not a goal to be a leader. He's like, it's not a goal. And I was like, what do you mean? Of course it's a goal. He's like, it's not a goal because I control it. He's like, goals are things that you can control. And that flipped my whole paradigm about how I thought about my career proactively. And he said, so what can you control that would kind of get there? Well, your activity every day. Are you hitting your activity metrics? Are you doing what you need to do? Your sales numbers are a given, right? And then are you being like a positive influence on your team? So are you doing the day-to-day work, the activity to show people that you're a leader? Are you helping people on the team? And a lot of people think just doing their job or being good at sales is how you get promoted. That's the prerequisite. The prerequisite to getting promoted is that you're hitting your numbers,
Right.
And it just opened my eyes. So what happened is 2 months later, my boss ended up leaving. And there was a girl who had moved from Chicago to Phoenix to open an office. I'd only been there for 3 months at the time, 3.5 months. And she'd been there for 2.5 years. I got the promotion over her to get to leader. And the reason was I knew what he was looking for. So guess what? Every day I was putting in the work, destroying my activity goals, destroying my sales. Because again, she'd been there for longer. Her sales on a monthly basis were higher than mine. Right. But I was aligned to what he wanted in a leader. And that's how you get, when you get promoted, it's about what they want, and managing up is, you don't really understand managing up, I think, until later in your career. And so that was a really powerful moment for me when I kind of learned the power of managing up and why managing up is just so important. So that would be maybe another, I think, big takeaway is like your job is to both do your work and manage your boss's expectation, what they think the work should be.
Right.
And
like
and that's what you got to do.
Yeah,
that's really
you
good.
basically did what they're looking for, and
Right.
that's how you stand out.
Them.
Right. If you're doing the opposite of what they're looking for, they're not, even if it's doing well, it's still not what they're looking for.
Yeah, or it's what you think you should be doing.
Right.
You think you know what the job is, and you think you know what you should be doing, but that's not it. Instead, it's about what it's their perception matters probably more than your perception of what you think should happen or not.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess you have two choices: to do what they want you to do, or leave and do your own thing. That's kind of
or like a there's like a mix. I mean, working, not all companies are, the devil, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But no, so for me, what happened, just to kind of fast forward my journey. So left there, was a VP of sales at Glassdoor, got layered there. Which basically they wanted to bring someone else in. Again, I was 30, 31, managing 40 people, had grown the business from 0 to $1 million in MRR in a year, like monthly reoccurring revenue to translate. And then left there, then, and basically got kind of like pushed out. Like I also, again, rough edges, right? Like this is a common theme that you'll see in my career, right? Telling one boss to F off, telling it. Then I go to the next startup, VP of sales, crush that. But again, have rough edges, struggle to like interact with like the CFO there. There's a crying incident. Like, and I just realized but what I realized is I'm not a good employee. Like I'm really good at the work. Like I'm super good at building and scaling sales organizations, but all the stuff around it, I'm not good at politics. Like the managing up, I'm like okay at parts of it, but really bad at other parts of it. Now, granted, fast forward, now it's been 7 years. Like these are corners I've now rounded quite a bit. So my ability to, navigate those types of waters more eloquently is much higher.
Well, what kind of things did you do to round those corners, or kind of suck it up and realize that, hey, this is what I have to do?
Pause, honestly. Just shut up, sit there, don't say anything. And if you still feel that way 2 days later, then go do something about it.
That's good.
For me, I never was like an angry emailer or anything like that, but I do see people like that. But I think I always want to resolve conflicts so much at times that there are times when you should actually just let things die. Like the conflict will go away if you just don't talk about it. Like I know that's like a really counterproductive, right? Like a therapist, right? You're supposed to talk about everything, but there's certain things where it's like, and actually maybe this is what it is. It's not sweating the small stuff. It's like, look, if Brandon doesn't do this and he fails, like who cares? Like it's fine. Like I don't need to go correct it, or I don't need to go tell Susan in finance that this thing was whatever. Just like let it go. And I think it's finding that balance. All right, here we go. It's the test. Sounds like very serious.
It does. It's like one of those.
I love that she's got like a Boston accent too.
That's
hilarious. You go to the floor. Yeah, I can't really move. There's not a lot I can do. You got to leave part of this in there, though.
Oh, I will.
I think the beginning part, we're like, oh.
Yeah, this is hilarious.
What's happening? All right, let's see if there's any more noise now. Fuck. Lady, I heard it 3 times now. Emergency.
There's an emergency.
Emergency.
Get out to your car right now.
They really do. That sounds like everything I heard yesterday at the football game.
Yeah.
Is she gonna come again? Please don't. You did it 3 times. I'm like looking at like the intercom, like it's her, like she's actually, it's her fault. All right, what were we talking about? We're talking about starting my own company.
Yeah,
I don't remember where I
just
left
about
off.
rounding off your the rough edges
Oh,
and,
right,
and,
right,
and
right,
all
right.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, we were just talking about like creating space and not sweating the small stuff. That's it,
Right.
man. Just don't
I love it.
let people fail a little bit. Let things not be your way. There's I think that's what I'm constantly surprised, that the more I shut up and just listen, that man, people might have different ways of doing things that are very valid and good and different than the way I do it, but still get a fairly similar outcome. And so it's just
Yeah.
kind of being, you start to be okay with that versus having to force everything. It's like the analogy, I've got this like this visualization technique I use where I picture this big castle wall. It's interesting. It's almost like the Wall of the North, right? If you're a Game of Thrones fan. And I imagine there's all these different ways to get over. There's like if you take 10 steps back and look all the way to the left, there was a door. Or if you're so close to it, you can only see that there's a rope. Or you can try to crash through it. Or you can take a step back and there's a guy with a jackhammer. Like there's just so many different ways to tackle problems. And that's another thing. And that's like a very delusional belief that I have, but it's served me very well. I believe that every problem is solvable. There is no problem in the history of mankind. You're like, oh,
Agreed.
I don't know how I would do this. You don't know how you would do it? Google it.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
type in
YouTube it.
Google. Like I didn't have Google. Like, man, dude, Google it.
Yep. YouTube it, Google it. Boston ladies.
But that is
back.
the truth, man. I don't understand why people don't. It makes no sense to me. I just don't understand like basic stuff. You're like, I don't know how to do that. It's like,
I know.
we're
We're in the information age. Like everything is at our fingertips.
YouTube. You don't know how to do that? YouTube it.
Yeah, YouTube's the first place I go.
Yes. So tell us, while our Boston lady is talking in the background, tell us a little bit about when you started your company, just what you did. Did you bootstrap it? And kind of leading up to that, what made you want to stop being an employee in a sense?
I was just honest with myself. Like, it was a very frank conversation and reflection of like, okay, what is the pattern here, Jake? Because again, what I've always been able to do a pretty good job of is analyze myself without destroying my own ego. Like being able to take an outsider's look at myself and my performance. It's what allowed me to get very good at sales very quickly too, is because I could listen to my calls and be like, that was dumb. Don't do that. Say this. I didn't need someone else to be my critic. I could do it, but also not get negative on myself. And that's what I think a lot of people struggle with, is like, it's okay that you screw that up. It's about getting it right, not being right. Right. And that's the saying that I have, that I live by, which is like, again, it's about getting it right, not being right. And that is how I've lived my life for forever. And so I just was honest with myself. I said, look, yeah, okay, you love the work. What about consulting? I didn't know any consultants. I didn't know anything about what the hell consulting even was, man. First 2 years of the business, I was like, is it sales or marketing related? And do you have cash? If the answer is yes, let's do it. Right. Like it wasn't I didn't have this grandeur of being an entrepreneur. I wasn't like, oh God, I hate this lady so much. It's like, but she's tested it now like 7 times.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what her deal is.
At what point? Yeah, it's all right. You guys, we've got a lot of good stuff in here.
And honestly, it's kind of
funny.
Adds to the value of it, because we try to say that, hey,
deal with issues as they come up.
And
that's it, man. It happens all the time.
Right. Slip
that's
the
life.
punches. Yeah, roll with the punches.
Life, dude.
Exactly.
That's why people get real depressed, though, man. I'll tell you that, because they expect that like in sales, I see it all the time in sales. And whenever we work with teams and we talk about this, it's, like they get an objection or a rebuttal, and then they're like, well, you get nervous. I'm like,
yeah,
what? You thought they're just going to lay down for you? You thought that this is just going to be like, oh, okay. Like again, when we work with companies, like, never prepare for the best case. What's the point? If the best case happens, I already know what to do. Like I just go take it down. Like I prepare for the worst. I prepare for again, like fire alarms going off in the middle of it, and like profanity being screamed or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm preparing for the worst case at all times. So to just kind of finish up like the evolution of Scaled. So right now, we're 30 people, New York, Austin, all over. We really, what I'll tell you where I messed up when I first started the business, that I only candidly took me like 3 or 4 years into the business to figure out that it was messing us up, is I didn't have a very clear vision of what I wanted the company to be. And I think a lot of times you're almost scared to make it too concrete because you don't want to limit yourself early on. And that can be very scary. People have money. People don't want to do that. So again, when I make that joke about, is it sales related? Do you have money? That can be a blessing and a curse, because then you take things that aren't necessarily what you want to do. So we were doing outsourced lead gen up until late 2015. I was sitting down with my partner, Matt, and we're talking. I'm like, dude, what do you think of this business? He's like, I hate it. I'm like, I hate it too. I hate it too. And that business was at a $90,000 a month run rate. It was $1 million a year business, and we killed it within a month. And because it wasn't, man, I did not start consulting to do setting appointments for people, but I got sucked into it because every company wants that. So I was like, all right, well, I guess we'll do that. So really, I think the smarter you are to say, look, this is the problem that I want to try to solve, and I'm only going to do these things. And you can still be wide. It doesn't mean that if people come to you for other things that you won't maybe consider doing that.
Right.
But what it does mean is that your focus outwardly will just be these things. And I think over every year of Scaled, I've gotten better at knowing what you're going to say no to is just as important as knowing what you want to say yes to. Amen. So when you're starting your own thing, I think it's okay to be a little more narrow than maybe even feels comfortable. And that was probably the biggest mistake that probably cost us, a year or two of growth. With hindsight being, 2020, but shit, it is what it is. So
right. So what did you do with the company or the arm of your company that you grew? Then you hated it. Did you sell that?
Yeah, we basically sold off our clients, sold off a few of our clients to competitors. Was able to convert a few of them into consulting clients.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then the other ones we just kind of like either just ended or wrapped up over the course of like a couple of months. And yeah, I mean, it was more like it's more like the interesting part is like wrapping down a business. Candidly, I feel like is more of an ego play, because it's like I grew the business from 300 to 800 to 1.2, and then but of that 1.2, 400 of that was this lead gen business. And so, we did one point, then the next year we were like relatively slow.
Here she is.
So anyway, that's what happened, right? Is I basically, it's a lot of ego here. Same thing as hiring people. I feel like don't hire people too quickly. Too many people, you want to go tell your boys, your mom or whoever, oh, we've got 5 people. So I got caught up in that a few times too, where I didn't realize I was doing it. I thought we needed to hire these people, but I should have grown slower. And we went through we actually had part of that happen this year too, where it's like, as a business owner, at least for me, I'm trying to build a company here. I'm not trying to get rich personally, right? If I wanted to do that, I would fire everybody and I'd just go be a hired gun consultant, and I could probably make $500,000 to $1 million a year easy. But I'm trying to build for the long term, right? I'm 39. Like I started the company, I was 33, I think. Yeah, it's like maybe, something like 32, 33. I'm like, I'm not trying to start a lifestyle business. One, this other thing, there's no such thing as a lifestyle business, period. There is no magic wand where it's like sitting on your ass, you're going to make $5 million. Dude, no. The amount of hard work it takes to get there is tremendous. So I knew very on I didn't want to build a lifestyle business, but I almost fought it so hard that I tried to grow too fast a couple different times.
Right.
And had to make some tough calls. But it just, that's the other thing too. It's been almost 7 years now. So I've got a chance to see enough cycles come and go of
that's cool.
Okay, this will be fine. That will be fine. It's just part of the game.
So what are some of your goals and your vision for going forward?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm super pumped, for 2020 and what all of it's going to unfold to. There's really 2 things that we're doing now that I'm super excited about. One is around digital presence, and that we've all known that you're
there's some emergencies going on in there. That's funny.
I mean, how many times are they going to test this thing?
I don't know, man.
It's like there's 6 times.
I know.
That's all right.
Test this shit 6 times.
We'll work through it. We'll work through it.
Oh man. So anyway,
you have exciting things coming. 2020 is a good year for you.
I'm so
digital.
excited. I had to ask you what it was about. Okay, so the big things we're working on, digital presence, where all of you have a digital presence. Why are you guys doing this podcast? To raise your, raise the, all ships raise. Your
That's
ship
right.
goes up, CEO capital partnership goes up. That is how this works. And I realized that about a year and a half ago, because we were doing what every consulting firm, we were putting out white papers, putting out blog posts, and then you put that stuff on social and like it does okay. It doesn't do fantastic. And I'm like, why are we spending all this time and money on these long form pieces of content? And so that's when we went all in on LinkedIn. And over the last year and a half, we were just quantifying this. Over the last year and a half, we've generated almost $600,000 in net new business from organic LinkedIn, like inbound. We're getting every month almost 3 million views a month on LinkedIn, which is the equivalent of like almost like $150,000 a month in free advertising.
Wow.
For free on organic. And so now we're doing that for companies and for specific individuals. So
that's awesome.
Because the problem is, I hate the term social selling is just messed up. It's not, you're not trying to sell. You got to figure to engage people.
Right.
If you try to social media, you don't connect and then sell immediately, right? You got to be smarter than that.
Right.
It's just like how you slide into the DMs on the gram, right? It's the same thing on LinkedIn. You got to be smart about how you do it. You don't just go straight for the ask. Like you build some capital, you comment. So, for us, what we're doing now is helping people to build audience. So making sure they're connecting with more of their relevant buyers, helping them to create like engaging content versus like stupid company reshares that get no love. And then optimizing that over time. So we partnered with really one of the only softwares in the world that can track page performance. And so now we can help to understand what's working, what's not working, and optimize that over time. So that's something that birthed out of our own work. And we really feel that if you're in a modern sales and marketing org, you've got to be paying attention to this the same way you are emails and cold calls.
Yeah.
Like there is such ability, and this is primarily B2B. It's obviously different if you sell to consumers, but again, like if you're in multi-family, we worked with a bunch of different like technology companies that sell into multi-channel or multi-family, and we've seen tremendous success with LinkedIn and Facebook. So like your audiences are online 100%, and I think you've got to, if you want to be a modern sales or marketing person, you have to know this game. You've got to start to learn what's happening there.
So would you suggest picking that one, it's picking Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, just picking one of those and just going all in on those versus trying to start 25, 25, 25 on each?
Nope. Just pick one, wherever your buyers are, that's where you should go. Like, so for in your game, hold on, what's it? Bigger Pockets? Is that forum?
Yep. Yeah, that's the Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin. Yeah. So if it's all real estate stuff. Yeah,
that's right, dude. If I'm in your game, my communities are probably LinkedIn and Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
And that's where I live. That's right. So for us, the answer is yes. So we were heavy on LinkedIn, and then we just repurposed like Twitter. Most of what I tweet and what we tweet is just it's pieces from LinkedIn. Yeah, with maybe like a little bit more fun or like edgy vibe to it. Like it's, so you don't have to. So my advice would don't try to be everything to everyone.
Right.
So for us, like we spend a disordinate amount of time on LinkedIn because guess what? We sell to CEOs, VPs of sales, and VPs of marketing. And guess where they live every day digitally? It's LinkedIn. If I sold to, 22-year-olds a toothpaste, I would only do Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like I would do nothing on LinkedIn. Yep. So it's all about where is your audience, and that's where you should be pointing your digital presence. But don't, to your point, Brand, don't try to boil the ocean day one. Right. Be disproportionate. So if you think your audience is that, go 60% here, 30% here, and then 10%, on the third one.
Very interesting. That's great advice, to be honest with you, because
I love that.
As we're growing this show, we got to figure out where our audience is mainly coming from and focus on that versus putting it all out there. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Jake, we're gonna jump into our moments of truth before our Boston firefighter lady comes back on. It's the same 7 questions we ask all of our guests here, and we're gonna kick it off here with the first one. Who is your success role model?
My success role model. It's kind of interesting. You read books about people and then you get very enamored with them, and then it's like, as life goes on and you get closer to people too, you're just like, oh, everyone's like a person. They all have their thing. So I would say it had been Jack Welch for a long, long time. I really just enjoy his very like candid, like leadership principles. Someone who I look at now though is like, you know who Bill Campbell is. He's a guy who kind of, he mentored all the like kind of like the early Facebook, Google. He's kind of like had his fingers in all this stuff in Silicon Valley behind the scenes that nobody really knew. So I think Bill Campbell's a pretty good person to look at, a guy who's built a pretty successful career, switched industry, he was at football, and then he, so he became this kind of, coach and advisor. So check out what Bill Campbell did. I think that'd be interesting for anyone.
Very good. What is your biggest success?
I don't think it's happened yet.
But
I think I'll always say
that's a good answer though.
Yeah, that's like a great answer.
I think, but here's the thing. I think I'll always say that, I don't think it'll ever be like, this is it. I'll tell you, if you look at my world, I think, look, I feel like I'm living it right now. Look, I've built a successful bootstrap company to 30 people with, office, started the company in Manhattan. That's an expensive place to start a company. I can tell you that. And, we've grown it, and, I'm really happy and proud of like where we're at now. We made the Inc. 5,000 list last year, and I think we'll be, hopefully in the top, like, maybe 500 or 1,000 companies this year. So we're continuing to grow.
Awesome.
So I'm really proud of like where we're at now. And individually, I closed a $4 million deal for one of our clients a few years ago. That was pretty rewarding. That we went from zero in spend to 4 million. And so I like closing big deals.
I love it.
Yeah. Sure,
so do we.
A lot of gratification there.
I love that. That's really good. Yeah. Tom Brady says something that's touching on the first thing you said, which you said, I don't think your biggest success has happened yet. Tom Brady was asked what his favorite Super Bowl ring was, and he said the next one. So that's kind of similar. And you're in Boston right now. So
yeah. sorry, Tom. The Chiefs had to dish the loss.
What's a typical day for you look like?
Typical day. And let's assume that it's, even if I'm traveling, it's fairly similar. So if I'm in like Central or Eastern time, then I'm usually waking up between 5 a.m. and 5:30. I've got a very specific routine that I follow. And this is a newer habit for me that I developed this year. So there's a book called the 5 a.m. Club. So it's an hour where I do a 20-minute small workout. And then sometimes I'll do another workout later. Then I do 20 minutes of meditation and planning. So just taking a look at my calendar for the next week, making sure so every day I'm planning, for that day and for days in the future. And then 20 minutes of personal development. So I've done like a whole bunch of different master's classes. I've done, I'm writing, so this kind of sets everything up. And then, usually maybe hang out with the kids for a minute. And then I probably start at like between 7:30 or 8 if I didn't have a breakfast. And then, look, in any given day, and I mean, I can just tell you, like today I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 meetings today. And then I get on a 7 p.m. flight back to Austin. And that's pretty standard. And like, look, I'll give myself gaps if I need it. That's one thing I've learned, that I will now, if I'm like, you know what, I can't, like, I'm not feeling it. Like I'm really good now at packing the right types. I can do 14 of a very specific type of meeting. Like I couldn't do,
if you have
I couldn't do like 14 of these, a day. Right. But that's it, man. I'm a calendar freak. I'm an inbox zero freak and a calendar freak.
I love that.
That's funny. So I don't even know how to work the Outlook calendar. And Will's always yelling at me. He's like, "Hey, send the calendar invite." I'm like, "Dude, I don't even know how to begin with that." So he's the calendar freak on our side here. So he keeps me in check.
Yep. So what's your favorite quote?
Favorite quote right now is one I heard from my man Kevin Hart, and I haven't always been a big Kevin Hart fan, but Kevin says, "Everybody wants to be famous, but nobody wants to put in the work." And I feel like in our world, that it could not be more true than it is today.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to hand it to them. They think it's an overnight success.
And yes, dude, that's what it is. The reason people make it look so easy is because they've grinded for so hard on it. Like I don't even think people have any idea how many movies Kevin Hart was in before, like, now he's in Jumanji and doing this stuff. But like before that, I mean, that guy had been in like hundreds of like film, like TV shows. like just work, and that's just every successful person. And it doesn't mean that you got to grind yourself out. I think a lot of people get that twisted, right? Like, oh, you got to work. You don't have to work 100-hour weeks or 80-hour weeks to get there. It goes back to what I said in the very beginning of this podcast, which was like just an extra hour a day.
Yeah,
right. That's what the 5 a.m. thing does.
10,000 hour rule. After 10,000 hours, you're a professional or expert at it. So,
yep,
that's right.
What are your favorite? Not what are your favorite hobbies? What are some of your hobbies or favorite hobbies?
Kansas City Chiefs. It's very top of mind for me right now. Skiing. I enjoy skiing. Writing. I enjoy writing. And I've got 2 kids. I've got a 5-year-old and a 20-month-old.
So
So I've got, yeah. So it's like work that and then trying to give my wife a break when I can.
It. Very cool. Very cool. What is the best business book that you've read?
I read a lot. So you can check out if you go to jakedunlap.com, there's and I think I can't remember, maybe it's / you can ping me on LinkedIn and I'll DM it. I've got a whole list of all the books but we'll pick one that I think's recent that I've really enjoyed. Okay, I'll pick one. There's one called Primed to Perform that I read this year that I had a ton of takeaways as a leader. But basically what it talks about is a lot of like why people actually move, why people actually have motivation to do very specific things. And so Primed to Perform is one I would suggest anyone who's in leadership or even if you're entrepreneur, I'd check it out.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. So I'll have to check it out. And last question here, Jake, if there was one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
The delta between good and great and all time is actually not as high as you think. That it is actually not that difficult to be really, really good at something. And it goes back to what we talked about throughout this conversation. You have to be willing to put in just a little bit of that work and make sure, and you will be willing to put in that work only if you're doing something that you truly, it's not that you're going to enjoy every day. That's delusional, right? It's that you enjoy the process of getting better at that thing. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you pick something where you enjoy the process at getting better, no matter how painful it is. And that will make you want to go deeper, want to invest that extra time.
That's so good.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's not that far away. It's the picture that they show of the guy mining through the dirt, and it shows 2 individuals. One guy found a little tiny diamond, and the other guy is, a foot away from this massive diamond, but he sees someone else's quick success. He kind of throws away his own success because it's, he thinks it's impossible.
Chases that, yeah.
Right. So
that's a good one. Yeah. I mean, it's like there's some cool stats about like the difference between the most, like the horses that win, that end up winning, $10, $20 million in their career, and the difference, and the horses that win like hundreds of thousands is like less than a second.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's right in front of you. It's not the difference isn't that big.
Right.
But Jake, we appreciate you being on the show today. I think you provided a lot of value for our listeners and for us. These interviews, we learn something new every time also. So we appreciate you being on the show today. And for our listeners, go follow Jake. Well, actually, Jake, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, easiest, I'm very active. We've talked about LinkedIn. So check out Jake Dunlap. You can just LinkedIn.com LinkedIn.com/Jake Dunlap. You can email me, Jake@scaled, SKALED.com. And that's probably the best way. You follow me if you're into sales and marketing. Make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. I drop 1 or 2 pieces of content a day that I think can help anyone get better at their game.
Awesome.
Well, listeners, you heard it. Go connect with Jake online on LinkedIn, and for the show, make sure you're subscribed to the show so that way you're not missing any of our daily episodes. Again, Jake, we appreciate you being on the show today.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.